Hello, welcome everyone to another Adobe Live Adobe Photoshop challenge with me, Sin Lagos, as your visual mentor today. And today's challenge, I'm excited to have you here. If it's your first challenge, make sure to restream the last week's, which was our first stream. Super cool stuff. So check that out. Let me just... I might hear myself a little bit. I think I'm streaming myself a little bit here. Anyways, join the chat and let me know where you're joining from as I check in with y'all and check on everything here. I don't think you hear me, right? All right, let me know in the chat if you hear me double. Audio and video, okay, awesome. Good to hear that. All right, I'm gonna take these off for now. All right, so let's get to know each other a little bit. I see some really cool people here on the chat. I see Ray, I see Idara moderating the chat, really awesome. So look out for some links that they'll be sharing here on the chat. We've got Apurva, what's up? So nice to see some familiar folks here. We've got Keys always in the house, so nice to see y'all. Lagos, I think is Logos, says Advait Art. Lagos is actually my last name, my family last name. Really, really cool because it connects me with my Spanish, which is a really great word for, how do I say? I always tell people, this is a great word for you to know. Lakes is Lagos in Spanish. So there you go. You got one word. I don't know if you'll ever use that, but that's something, right? That and cafecito. I'll give you that one, which means coffee, which is what I have right now. All right, so let's jump into checking out some of the work that I've done in the past. So you can see kind of my approach to photography. Today, we're gonna be talking about removing distractions in photography, which is really a big part of my workflow process most of the time. So I hope this helps you out. There's a lot of really cool nuggets here in Photoshop for us to explore. So let's dive in. This is my work. This is some of the selected works that I love to showcase on my website. Let's do this in full screen. There you go. And as you can see, I'm a lover of very strong contrast. Light, of course, is the name of the game when it comes to photography, but for me, shadows play just as important of a role, and it has really kind of permeated throughout all of my work. Whether I chose it or not, it's just a style that feels so fitting every single time I turn my lens to something. It tends to kind of befit that aesthetic. Don't think it's an aesthetic as much of my curiosity for those elements. Geometry is a big part of my journey because I come from graphic design. So when I stepped into photography, this was just like a no-brainer for me. I was going to introduce my color principles from graphic design. I was going to introduce the geometry and symmetry and perspective, leading lines, and all of those techniques that I've learned to apply in my design. For those of you who have gotten some really cool tutorials from me on the design side of things, you know how I love to do that. So this has been my work, some of the work that I'm really, really proud of from different parts here in America, different states, Chicago, New York, really cool places. I love solo traveling. It's one of the things I wanted to challenge myself to do, and I challenge anyone to do it. It's a beautiful experience. So today we're going to be talking about some of the work, some street photos that I took with my phone, but also with my camera. So a little bit of both, just to play around and see how we can navigate both types of files and what they can provide for us. So our first stream was about camera raw. So definitely be sure to restream that. Camera raw was a great part of our first challenge, and we're going to touch on it just a little bit here so that you get a hint, and also so that it could build your curiosity. But we also need to know that camera raw works mostly on raw files. So I've introduced some of those in here. You do have some assets which you should check on the chat. I think this is the image, the primary image that I provided for you, but it's one of these. I think it's definitely this one. So definitely jump on Photoshop with me and try it out. Try out some of these things that I'll be doing here today. All right. So let's get started here. We have a little bit of time together. Try to rush through that intro as much as possible to give us as much time for the goodies. All right, so this is an image. Let's examine this image. Now, when I look at an image, I oftentimes have to ask myself, what is it that I'm looking for? And when it comes to images like this, for me, is often I want less distractions because I want more focus somewhere else. So that's why we remove distractions, really. And this, in this case, the focus that I was hoping for, the reason why I raised my lens was for this fellow right here, right in the center. And also because of this amazing reflection, right? Do y'all remember reflections? You know, you see a puddle, hashtag puddles or something like this on Instagram. I learned a lot online. So this is definitely one of those things that has not escaped me. I love reflections no matter where we are. This was actually not a puddle. It was just a glassy ground floor for the jets, which is really awesome. So I love silhouettes. Silhouette work is one of my favorites. I think we're gonna make this fellow even more silhouetted at the end. But at the core, you know, this image could be much better than it is. It's currently like at its sea level and we want it to be A+++, right? So we got to remove some of these distractions. I think some things are deemed distractions in my book when they're not adding to the storyline, right? So if this person here is not adding in the storyline, they're almost on the edge, they're not quite in, they're not quite out. Okay, distraction. We have a car here, which is kind of distracting us from this really cool jet plane back here. So distraction, right? Number 2. We can't even tell what this shape is. I know what it is, right? It's like the fuel system for the jet planes, but you can't really tell, right? We're in the hangar here, so it's kind of hard to tell. And we have a reflection to add to that distraction. One of the things that I love to do is squint my eyes, and mind you, I'm in Photoshop. I put this at full frame. I squint my eyes and then I look at it and try to see what stands out to me the most. And right now, the most prominent thing is that rear shadow here on the right-hand side. So we're gonna try to remove these with a few techniques. Okay, so first of all, this is a raw file. So we have a few opportunities here to enter camera raw. We're gonna go to filter, camera raw filter. And now we're in the camera raw editing mode, right? So in here, we can do a lot of really cool stuff, like doing some color editing to introduce some nice color palettes here. We created a few presets last time, which was really nice. We have some presets available to us already based on skin tone, based on maybe some themes like summer. This one's really cool. Let's go with that one, right? So there you go, that easy. I just added a little bit of color hue. And what I'm gonna do is straighten this image first and foremost. Let's see here. All right, so I wanna straighten this image. I'm gonna go into, for best results, apply lens. Okay, so let's see if we can do a little bit of fixing on this image, just a tad bit. Offset this image. That looks fine, I think. Press enter, and then we're gonna go back here. Actually, I kind of don't like that. All right, so forget the cropping part. Let's jump right into the removing part. Okay, so let's remove some of these items. Now, one of my recommendations is to remove things one at a time. You might want to be tempted to remove everything at once, but remember that in the back end, the intelligence factor that happens in the back end is gonna take into account everything at once. And that's not gonna be the best way to approach it. A little bit at a time helps. So let's try to remove this. Now we have the remove tool here in Camera Raw. This is very similar to another favorite app of mine, which is Adobe Lightroom. And in here, we've introduced a really cool element called Use Generative AI, and it's early access. So pretty kind of, you know, it's pretty robust for being early access, to be frank. So let's give it a chance here. If you don't check this on, it's gonna use the regular object aware, which is also an option right here. But in this case, I wanted to take into account the environment. So I'm just going to select this area and also the shadow. That's it. So nothing happens yet. We have to hit apply, right? So we're going to hit apply and we'll let that run and mitigate the environment. Basically figure out the environment, and that was way too fast. I couldn't even explain what it did. So here's the cool thing about this. Here's why this is one of my favorite approaches. I have options. I've got 3 whole options. So I can decide which of these is a better option for me. Now, one of the rules that I like to think about, because we have to create boundaries for ourselves, right? I don't think this environment had mountains, right? So this is in Miami. We don't have mountains like this. So this is a no. But then something like this, it's very close to what I had before. So it's recognizing there's a building there. It's just stretching the building. It understands that I'm trying to remove this really, really dark area, and that works perfectly. So it gives me these 3 variations. Now I can hit refresh to do another run. So that's always helpful because you never know, right? Like it can always provide different options. So we've got this one, and it's always kind of like a gamble. It's always going to be slightly different. So I love to just run it a couple times or choose a few things at a time. So I'm going to do it one more time while I check the chat. I see here, looking good, says Barbara. To straighten, the crop tool has a ruler. Oh, that's right. Good job, Sean. And it says here, hey, what's up? Maruv is on the chat also. So nice. Okay. All right. So that's looking much better to me. I like that better. That is a no-go. There is some dead giveaways when it comes to some of these things, right? So it's a risk to remove an entire space that is that big. So kind of be aware of that. Zoom in, retouch slowly and with small spots. It's always the best approach. But for this sake, I'm kind of going for it. All right, so let's remove this car right here also. Let's do a quick retouch right here. And you have to remember this is a reflection, so we have to take into account all of these little elements too. And it's interesting to test the generative fill option here in Camera Raw versus inside of Photoshop. They all kind of operate slightly different, so test them out. Let's apply. And I think that did a good job, right? Yeah, that did a really great job. And we have a couple options here too, 2 and 3. All right, so I think I'm gonna stick with this one. I like this one so far. All right, I'm gonna hit OK. And this time I'm gonna open it in Photoshop. So now we're back in Photoshop and we're gonna try removing some of these other distractions right here. Now the cropping tool is a great way to remove distractions. I used to often just crop out anything that was on the edge that was going to not work for me. So let's test that out. How would that look if we were using cropping as a method? Now I can do a 5x7 here and do Shift X to rotate that. And I can just, get rid of everything on the sides, and that's fine. But now I'm losing a little bit of the scaling, which to me, that looks great and I love it. We've removed that biggest factor, which was on the right-hand side. But if you don't want to remove that scaling, like lose out on that other detail, you might want to go in here and remove some of these other items. Now, in here is the remove tool, or letter J. I'm not entirely sure why it's the letter J, but it is. The remove tool lives within all of these other cool remove options. If you don't see it in here, you want to go into the ellipses right here, and you're going to find edit toolbar. And in here, you're going to find a bunch of different tools, and you can go into the remove tool in here, right? And make sure that it's at the top. So if that's your priority, that's the tool that you use the most. For me, it is. I love to put it all the way at the top. So when I hit letter J, that's the first one that's going to pop up. If I hit J again, it's going to be the next one and the next one and the next one. So that's a great way to just customize your toolbar and make sure that you have something that is right at your reach whenever you need it, right? So this remove tool has a power, it's powered by, I think, Adobe Firefly. So it's gonna be a lot smarter than all these other tools, right? So I love it. I think for me, it takes my vote. It's one of my favorites. If I go in here and just quickly remove that top, it just has this like understanding of what to do right away. So let's go in here and remove this shadow and this person right here on the right. Now I'm trying to hold on here to the mouse as much as possible, but if I let go, it's gonna make that selection super fast, and I don't quite want that immediately. What if I want to do the whole selection at once without it being activated as soon as I let go of the mouse? I want to remove after each stroke, or I can check that off and not remove after each stroke, so I can refine my selection before it does its entire thing, right? So that's what I want to do in this case. I think I'm going to go something like this. Actually, yep, that's looking good. Something like that. And something that I really love is that I don't have to be so refined as I used to have to in early Photoshop versions. So I'm going to do that. There you go. And I think there's a little bit of her elbow right here. Okay, so there, I'm trying to keep up with the chat at the same time. So multitasking here just as well. All right, so what now? What happens now? We have to check this little mark and it's gonna go. Now it's activated. And it does its thing. And of course you can go in here and refine it a little bit more and start to retouch. Everything's more about going into the details of it. I'm doing it a little bit crass, to be frank. I would probably spend a lot more time zooming in and zooming out and taking away these elements, but I want to jump into the other photos too. So let's hit that check mark one more time. And this time I actually want to remove after each stroke. So I can do something like this. There you go. And we're gonna do the cropping tool again. And somebody mentioned the straightening tool. We can use the straightening tool here on the tools panel up top and just grab the straightening tool, follow the horizon line, and it's gonna straighten it for us. And then we're gonna hit enter. And I think that's kind of cool, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm gonna center it just enough. Hit enter. And then one of the things I really like is that when I select this layer, I can always go in here and see different options in the contextual bar. So you can do so many cool things just by selecting a layer and seeing different shortcuts. So I like this so far, right? What do y'all think? Much better than where we started. Let's see if we can see where we started in the history panel. Open. Really busy, right? And then now, how we have it now? Much better. All right, let's move on to another one. Let's see which one do y'all want to check out. So we've got this one, this one, this one. I really like that one, actually. I think I might go with this one. This is one of the files that we have access to. So at this time of night, I'm on green tea, says Ray. Yeah, I cannot drink coffee. No matter what I do, I'm like, today's a good day to drink coffee. Not entirely. Very sensitive to caffeine, but nevertheless, I do it because it tastes so good. So definitely a green tea kind of person. I love that. All right, so here we go. What is the distraction in this image? So I can see a couple things here. This image is almost great. I see some really cool strengths that I want to highlight. And then I can see some distractions that are taking away this image from being an A+, right? So we're talking about that measure. And I don't know what you're seeing, but I'm gonna, walk you through some of the things I'm seeing so far. So the reason why I raised my phone in this case, not my camera and my DSLR, it was my phone. As you can tell, it's a vertical frame. was because I love this really cool spotlight right here, this line. I just wanted to see somebody pass by that was gonna look really neat. And you know, it's looking so cool up to here, but then all of a sudden there was another person and they're squeezed together with a car. So that kind of is ruining it for me. I'm not loving that. I was hoping this person would be completely isolated, and I think not everything has to happen during the shot. Some things can be improved in post-production, right? To kind of follow that storyline. And you're the visionary at the end of the day. Here are some other distractions I'm not liking. So if I look at this valet thing, it's not adding to my storyline. It's just a valet sign, and it's not very peculiar. There's some signs I definitely advocate for. Like, for example, if it's a sign that has a particular language, it could be cool because to other cultures, it could work out. So maybe I could keep it for that reason. But in this case, I feel like it's much more distracting than it is adding value to this. I love logos also, logos that are representative of a city, things like that. I tend to keep. But then something like this, we've got a little sign here that is just kind of facing the opposite way. So it's just noisy. And this is New York, so you kind of have to count on that it's going to be fairly complex. But we've got some like feet back here, little things like that, right? We've got a little bit of trash here, nothing that is actually helping the storyline. We've got a tree right here, and the tree soars. I mean, this is probably the next tree to the left side of that, not helping. So let's do a couple things here to improve this image now that we know all of the distractions that we have available and we don't want to be available. Actually, let's try doing here's a different option I'm going to show you. So I'm going to do a quick selection tool, right? So I'm going to select this valet right here, and I'm going to right click it and select delete and fill selection. And now that's using, you saw that in case it escaped you, that's using the contents aware fill as opposed to generative fill, right? And you lose a little bit of that line right there, in which case we can grab the stamp tool, just grab a little bit of that stamp. With the stamp tool, it's all about the reference. So holding option, you pick the reference, and then you can click to bring back that line. There you go. That's simple, right? Now we want to remove this person right here. So I'm going to use the fastest way along with this thing right here. That's not working out for us. And now we can also say delete and fill selection and see what it does for us. So it did a fairly good job. There are different instances that generative fill might be a better fit, and there's situations where content aware fill tends to be better. So right click, delete and fill selection. Doing good. Now we lost some of the trees here, so we might want to bring those back. So let's go in here and select this area. And then this time we're going to say generative fill, which we also have on the contextual bar, but we right click this time. Looks slightly different, achieves the same thing, and just hit generate. Let's see if it brings back the trees for us. Ray says, I have a time-lapse car. Yeah, similar scene. I want you to practice what is it that you objectively are seeing as a distraction and try to remove it with some of these techniques. So it did a pretty okay job. Let's see, that tree looks a lot better, I would say. This one here in the middle did a better job. Already we're isolating our fella in here, so it's looking much better. Now, here's another thing I like to do. I like to select the object selection tool, click in my scene on the original layer in this case. Actually, I'm gonna merge these two because I like that selection. And I'm gonna select this fella right here. Do the best I can to select it very fast. Okay, so we've selected them here, and I'm gonna copy and paste. So we have this person isolated. So another way I love to kind of remove distractions is very, very simple. I'm gonna go into filter, blur, and do a quick motion blur. And this motion blur in this case is around 47 to just follow this line. And that creates just another sense of, hey, focus on the subject and not the background. So that's looking super awesome. So if we look at the before, when we open it, right, a lot of different distractions here. And now to the after, motion blur, looking so swell. I love it. And we did this one also, which is looking so great. I love it. So I want you to try this. I dare you try as many of the techniques that I did just here and showcase them. Follow us on YouTube and stay tuned for the rest of the streams. Thank you for being here and join me for our next round, day 3 of Photoshop challenges. Bye.